Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest instalment of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray. It's Sunday, the 5th of March 2023, and we're going to be here to talk all things Rangers, notably the 3-1 win over Kilmarnock at Ibrox yesterday. Just to go through the usual sort of formalities before we start, guys, this is the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans, by fans, and all content is free. You can get us over at the forum at gersnet.co.uk, and there's lots of articles on there. We've had one recently this week, and it's been put up, which is quite good. Obviously the podcast with ourselves and the history archive as well, so go and check out the website. You can get us over on Twitter as well at Gersnet Online. And just before we start as well, just want to give a little shout out to our sponsors, and that is Forest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter for Rangers for many years, and we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com. And you can also visit the Forest Precision Executive Lounge, a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand. For more information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Now that we've got that out of the way, need to introduce you to my guest. First up, Brian Archer. Brian, we spoke on Friday, and like I said when we were offline, I've went less Jed Ward in with the hairstyle today, so they decided to not do anything. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I know you've kind of toned it down a bit with the hairstyle, but yeah, doing well. Good victory on Saturday to cheer me up a bit. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Here to talk about Rangers, so that will definitely perk us up. Also joining us tonight is Mr. Ross Bennett. Ross, I don't think I've been on with you for a wee while. How are you? How you doing, mate?
I'm very well. Yeah, no, I had a good result yesterday. At about 12:45 today, I saw the half-time score, St Mirren versus Celtic, and I was in a very good mood. Less good mood by about 2 o'clock, I suppose, but I mean, I've just seen the Man United result as well. So no matter how bad things get at Ibrox, at least we haven't just had a 7-0 pumping from our rivals. No,
that is a very, very good point. And to be honest, keeping in mind with that Man United Liverpool result earlier, maybe our 7-1 thrashing off Liverpool wasn't so bad earlier this season. At least we got a goal late, Ten Hag. But yeah, obviously, need to speak about the game yesterday. Brian, I'll start with you. It was a 3-1 win, pretty good first half performance. Not so great in the second half, but it was job done, and a bit of a recovery after the final last week.
Yeah, we spoke on Friday about the kind of need for a fast start and the kind of impact the crowd might play in terms of needing to kind of be on the players to get them up for it, and I think they did that from kind of the early stages. They seemed right at it. They were quick to every ball. I liked the kind of one-touch play, particularly from Cantwell. He was tremendous in that first half. Some of his kind of interplay with Raskin and Jack I thought was really good, and we sort of blew them away in the first half, kind of like we said we needed to. And then I'm sure we'll talk about the second half was kind of almost a non-event, unfortunately. But, first half performance-wise, we can't really fault them. So it's probably the best first half we've seen at Ibrox, certainly, since Michael Beale came in. I know we keep going back to the result at Tynecastle, but in terms of at home, I would say that's probably the best we've played in the first half, certainly.
Yeah, Ross, Brian saying they're the best we've probably had in the first half since Beale's taken over at Ibrox. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I thought it probably is. It was very fast, very dynamic. It looked very creative, and we carried a threat. We could have gone in 5-0 up, and I don't think anyone could have complained if we'd gone in 5-0 up at half-time, were it not for the fact that Fashion Sakala, you never really know what you're going to get. So he missed a couple of really, really golden chances. I agree, the Tynecastle performance a couple of months back, a very, very complete, dominant 90-minute performance, but I was really happy with the response for the first half yesterday, the response after the cup final. I think we showed hunger and desire and passion and fight. That seemed to bleed away in half-time for some reason, but I don't think we can ask for more. You come away from a disappointing cup final where you lose 2-1 against your rivals. To go into the next, go into half time in the next game 3-0 up, I think is the perfect response.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with the opponent as well. I mean, Brian, I was saying on Friday how, I didn't I didn't really expect much from this game. Obviously, I expected Rangers to go on and win relatively comfortably, but I felt it would have been a bit of a scrappy match. And, like you said, getting that fast start was definitely the key, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think we kind of predicted how Derek McInnes would set up. He would try and frustrate, and he would try and make it difficult. We know how Derek McInnes' team set up against Rangers, and I think the key thing was we never really let them frustrate us because we were so quick from the off. We never let them do that thing of, taking the extra 10 seconds over goal kicks and throw-ins. Because we got our goal early on, it kind of made their tactics sort of went out the window a bit. Because if they wanted to kind of take the extra 10 seconds over throw-ins and goal kicks at that point, then it's kind of their time they're wasting. Whereas getting the early goal. So I think that really helps in these types of games, and it's these types of teams that we're going to play more often than not at Ibrox, in terms of they want to come and frustrate, and they want to get the crowd, kind of get their back up a bit and get the ground starting. But if we start fast and we get a goal early, then that kind of throws that out the window. So it was definitely good to see. It's something I think that we've complained about quite a lot since Beale came in, is not having the fast starts and needing that half-time kick up the backside to get them going. And it's probably one of the few times since he's came in where he's not really had to deliver that, so that was nice to see.
Yeah, and also it's a weird one because, as Brian mentioned earlier, most of the time since Beale's came back, it's been a slow start. You get the boot up the backside at half time, and then we come out all guns blazing in the second half. Actually seemed weirdly to be the opposite effect yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely the inverse of the norm, I suppose. But it's a little frustrating in a way because we probably are still searching for a complete 90-minute performance at home. I don't believe that we've necessarily been treated to a really dominant performance for the entirety of the game at Ibrox under Beale. Now, obviously, results-wise in the league, that doesn't matter at all. You look at the results that we've had with just 2 points dropped in the 11 league games or however many it is that he's been there for. So I certainly can't complain on the results front. And I suppose there's a psychological element to yesterday as well. You're playing a team who I think now are joint bottom of the league, if I'm not mistaken. You're 3-0 up at halftime. You're coasting. You're cruising. The players are undoubtedly looking ahead to Wednesday night, where they're facing a fairly resurgent Hibs side who have turned things around under Johnson. So I suspect they subconsciously perhaps took their foot off the gas and relaxed a little bit and became a little bit lazier, a little bit sloppier, which is frustrating to see as a fan. But no, I do still think that we are searching for a total 90-minute domination performance at Ibrox. As I say, we've mentioned Tynecastle as a really, really good example of that away from home. And I still think, I have this personal feeling that Beale still has quite a lot of work to do to win over a certain number of our fans. I think there's a certain section of the fan base that wasn't happy with Beale taking the job in the first place, that don't feel he has the right experience or whatever. I think if he can find a way to get those players to put in a dominant 90-minute performance at Ibrox consistently, then that'll go a long way to winning everyone over.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it is a bit of a concern for me, I won't lie, because, you mentioned them earlier, Ross. We need to, obviously the Celtic game, you look at them over a 90-minute period. They weren't great in the first half today, but, they go out and completely blitz St Mirren and score 5 goals in the second half. So it is something that we're going to have to start doing, those 90-minute performances, because this season it's clear that it's the Old Firm games that are going to make up who wins the league and who doesn't. Because with the greatest of respect, I think this is the worst standard of the SPFL Premiership that I've ever seen out with the Old Firm. Like today, watching that Celtic game, St Mirren were frustrating Celtic, but there was an inevitability that they were going to get that goal, especially when St Mirren went down to 10 men. And also as well, like watching the first half, it was like as soon as St Mirren went a goal up, they just didn't know what to do. Some of their play was terrible. They probably deserved to go on with maybe a point at half time. I wouldn't say all, taking the lead as such, but it was just really bad. I mean, all they were doing was every time Trevor Carson had the ball, he was just booting it up the park, and he was literally just passing it to Joe Hart. I mean, he couldn't even control like his punts up the park into like a corner or anything like that to try and push Celtic in their own half. It was just straight back to Joe Hart, and then Celtic start again, and inevitably they're going to score from that, which they've shown so many times this season. I think with Rangers this season, I'm slowly but surely getting that belief back that we will get a result, even if we're a goal down, because we've done it now several times under Beale where we've went behind. We've done it against Kilmarnock, Hibs, Aberdeen. We went behind and we pegged them back eventually. So that's something that I think the belief's there in terms of doing that. But you're right, Ross, we need that 90-minute performance. And Ross, how concerning is it for you about the fact that we're not getting these full game performances yet? Because as you say, I think we're 15, 16 games into the Beale era, and I do think that when it comes to playing Celtic, the games in which the Championship will be won or lost, you need to put in a 90 performance. You can't play well in 20, 30-minute periods like we done last Sunday, and obviously we know what happened there.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the bigger games, the more difficult games, and the Old Firm is absolutely the right way to highlight that. We need to be at it and dominant for 90 minutes in those games, and I would include Hibs midweek in that, because they are one of the form sides in the league at the moment, and going there is always a hostile and intimidating place. So we've seen it in Beale's 2 matches against Celtic so far. You know, the League Cup final last weekend, our start was atrocious, and it was only when the formation or the personnel was changed that slightly started to turn for me. But you could argue it was the same with the League Old Firm game at New Year there, where we started fairly pedestrian and we started fairly slow. But as you say, we are competing in, no disrespect, but this is a disrespectful thing to say, we're competing in a weak league at the moment. We're competing against weaker teams. So actually 90% of the games, it doesn't concern me at all, because even as we go to places like Pittodrie, I have confidence, like yourself, that we will find goals and we will turn it around. And even if we're only dominant for 45 minutes, we're still good enough to get the result in that 45 minutes. So 90% of games doesn't concern me at all. And I think the league results bear that out. But yeah, for those bigger games, it does concern me. But what I will also say is that I think we all would agree that Michael Beale is working with a squad that does not match up or live up to our expectations at the moment, and personnel should be better in that playing squad. I have confidence that when he has the players that he wants in there, we'll see a very, very, very different team.
Yeah, let's hope so, Ross. And Brian, just on that, I mean, we are putting in maybe not the best of performances for the 90 minutes, but we are getting the results. Is it a concern to you that we're not getting those full game performances yet?
I think when it comes to the bigger games, yes. I think when you go to play Celtic, you need to put in these 90-minute performances. But I think against the rest of the league, and I think you probably see this in what Celtic tend to do, I'm not convinced that they tend to put in 90-minute full throttle performances. They'll blow teams away for 60 minutes and then inevitably take their foot off the gas. My problem is, on Saturday, we played well for the first half, we blew them away, and then instead of taking our foot off the gas, we almost stopped and we let them back into it for a spell. And that's my problem. I don't really have any issues with us blowing teams away in the first half or for the first 60 minutes and then taking our foot off the gas and conserving energy, but still kind of maintaining that dominance and that control of the game. And I think generally that's what happens. Generally you don't get 90 minutes full throttle every game. That's unlikely to happen in any team really. But my problem with Saturday, and my problem is that at times this season, instead of taking our foot off the gas to conserve energy or maintain some sort of control, we've stopped and we've let teams back into it, or we've started slowly and let them take the lead. And for me, that's kind of what we need to fix is, yes, the 90-minute performances, we're going to need to put those in against Celtic, but for me just now, I think we almost need to have 60-minute full throttle performances or 75-minute full throttle performances to just blow teams away, get the convincing lead, and then we can take our foot off the gas and conserve energy and maintain control.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and you make a good sort of comparison there with Celtic, and that is what they do. I think with them as well, it helps that, on the 60-minute mark, you can bring on, up to 5 players who are all multi-million pound signings. And, I just don't think our squad is at that level yet. Well, that's maybe the wrong phrase. It probably is at that level. I think if you look at both squads on paper, individually, I don't think there's anything in it, to be honest. I think it is a coin toss. It's just that none of our players are available most of the time. And also, this season, they've just, for whatever reason, the performances haven't been there. People, it seems, have checked out, which obviously happens in football in any walk of life, really. Brian, one thing that I've sort of picked up, and it's not in the agenda, but just thinking about it there, the last few weeks we've had breaks in between games of a week, pretty much. Obviously that run stopping with the game at Easter Road midweek, but that was probably the first time since having that sort of 7-day turnaround from the last game that we've went in and put in, any type of good performance. Because you look at the last couple of weeks, the Celtic game obviously was horrific, especially the start, and that was probably one of the things that disappointed me the most, the fact that we had a whole week to prepare for it. I know a couple of players were a wee bit niggly with injuries and stuff like that, but there's still no excuse for putting that start in that we did. The Partick Thistle game as well, I know we made changes, obviously, because it was a cup game, but wasn't really there either. Ross County game as well, the 2-1, that was a bit laboured, so do you think now that maybe we're getting to that performance level after having that sort of week off?
I hope so. I also think there's an element of the players maybe felt from the week before they kind of owed us a performance. I think they knew they'd underperformed the week before. I think they probably feel the same as you, and I think John Lundstrom said as much, although he was criticised for it, that he didn't feel there's much between the two teams when everyone's on for him, and he said that they just didn't turn up. And I think they probably were as angry about that as us. So I think they went out on Saturday with the belief that, we've let the fans down there, we kind of owe them a performance. And I think they really went for it from the first whistle. But we need to be doing that, more consistently, not just after a bad defeat. And that's kind of where we need to get to. And I think the other thing that helped is there looked to be a freshness in the team with Cantwell and Raskin. I know that's quite a cliche thing to say when new players come in, but they did look to inject some real energy in the middle of the park. Even guys like Ryan Jack, he looked, more kind of his usual self with Raskin next to him. That's a combination I wanted to see since Raskin came in. I think that could be a really good combination in the middle of the park, and I'm kind of interested to see now when Tillman comes back, how does Michael Beale fit? Raskin, Cantwell, Tillman, Jack, all into the team, or does he have his preferred 3 out of those 4 or 5 if you include Kamara, and then you've also got Lundstrom. So all of a sudden now it looks like we've got options. So hopefully that helps in terms of he's been able to maybe pick different players for different teams. He's been able to rest players when they need a rest. I think it's clear that John Lundstrom hasn't been fit for a while. Even before he got injured, he was saying that he was carrying injury. So hopefully this will give Beale the chance to take him out the firing line. Kamara as well, I think he said that he needs an operation, I think was mentioned before. So hopefully this gives these types of players the time to make him out the firing line, and then let fresher players like Raskin and Cantwell come in and show what they can do. So hopefully that means we're on the road to seeing that kind of first half performance on a more consistent basis.
Yeah, hopefully. And Ross, something that I found quite interesting in the manager's press conference yesterday, I can't remember what he said verbatim, but it was basically that we kind of lacked that control in the second half because Jack and Raskin were starting to feel it a little bit. And then when he got the fresher players on, the likes of Lundstrom, that's when we started to get that control again. A point that I've made here, obviously, we started the game with Jack, Raskin, Cantwell, the same midfield that we finished the Celtic game with when the performance was obviously a lot better. Do you think that was maybe a bit of an admission from the manager that he got that line-up wrong last week in the midfield?
Well, I think we could see at half-time of last weekend's cup final that he'd got that midfield selection wrong. But yeah, I think he made a bad choice last week. I think he'll be the first to admit that as well. I actually don't even think that Ryan Jack is going to be a first choice centre midfielder when everyone's fit. But I think as fans, we want to see the likes of Cantwell and Raskin starting. They've been brought in. We probably actually all wanted and maybe expected more signings in January. So I think the minimum that we expect now is to see those two starting games. And from what I've seen of them, they're both very, very capable of being hugely important players for us in this league. They're high quality players. I still don't really understand why they didn't start last weekend, whether it was fitness reasons, whether it was that he didn't want to risk them in their first Old Firm in a cup final and have them overwhelmed by the occasion. But I would like to think that going on week now, those two, but look, you could see it again in yesterday's performance, that those two are clearly bringing a different kind of energy, new ideas to the team. They are Beale signings. I think that's really, really important, that they're not another manager's players. Throw Tillman into that mix. It's very exciting. Bring back a fit Yanis Hadji, and that's very exciting as well. And that midfield is looking very competitive now for different styles of games. We've spoken a lot as fans. We've spoken over the last probably 12 months about how frustrating it can be to see Glenn Kamara, Ryan Jack and John Lundstram all playing together in the same midfield, because it's so packed and it's quite slow and it's very defensive and negative. But conversely, we could see a midfield of Cantwell, Raskin and Tillman, which would be very creative, very exciting to watch, but not right for every game. So it looks like we've got a lot more flexibility and a lot more options. And then we go back to what you said, Craig, a few minutes ago, that it feels that Celtic at the moment can get to 60, 65, 70 minutes, go to their bench and bring on multi-million-pound or international players. Well, we're getting closer to that now. I think we need more of a rebuild in the summer. But if all of these players are getting fit, I think we're getting close.
Yeah, I think so as well. And a comment I've got here from CGM55, at home is a midfield three with both Jack and Raskin. They did Raskin, Cantwell and Tillman would be interesting. I suppose that is an interesting point. I think the way that Beale likes to play is you've got one sitter, then an 8 that can sort of play both boxes, I feel like, and then your 10 who's going to be basically trying to cause chaos for the opposition going forward. Cantwell, I thought, was very interesting because whilst Brian, he was playing as a 10 yesterday, he was all over the place. Like, not in a bad way, guys. Like, he was all over the pitch. At times he was covering Tav at right back and stuff like that as well, I noticed. The guy, I know obviously we'll talk more in depth about his performance later on, but he seemed to be able to just do everything. Like, one part of his game that I've noticed that he's really good at is like his flexibility. I don't know if you notice, like, the way that he sticks his legs out, it's a wee bit like a frog, right? It's like he can stick his leg out and sort of get the ball from places where you maybe shouldn't be able to do it. There was a point in, I think it was the second half, where the ball was going out, but he's managed to stretch his leg sort of long enough that he can keep the ball in play. So for me, that sort of athleticism is something that in the midfield we've been just crying out for ages. On that comment there, Brian, do you think at home games we're having to play with two sitters? I know Raskin's not a sitter as such, but what do you make of that comment?
I think Michael Beale likes his two sitters. I think he said previously that he prefers that system. I think I put in the WhatsApp chat yesterday about potentially playing Tillman, Raskin and Cantwell as a midfield three. I think, I don't like to make this comparison too often, but if you look at the other side of the side, they tend not to play with a traditional holding midfielder. They play three of them in there. If you look at Moy, McGregor and Tati, not one of them is like a big, powerful destroyer midfielder. They don't really play with two sitters. They're all capable of doing all three roles in the midfield almost. And I'd be really interested for us to try a midfield three of Raskin, Cantwell and Tillman, because I think Cantwell's work rate is something that's really surprised me. His work off the ball, his ability to retain the ball and kind of win possession high up the pitch is something that's impressed me. And I think Tillman's of that ilk as well. He'll still work, even if he's not having the best game, he'll still work. He's still got that work ethic. And I've seen people say that he's lazy. I don't think that at all. I think he's actually a really hard worker in the midfield, to be honest. And I think, Raskin's not a traditional sitting midfielder. His first thought is, when he gets the ball, his first thought is, right, how can I progress this forward? How can I get us on the attack and get us on the front foot? Very often you don't see him, very often will you see him sideways pass or go back the way. His first thought is always, right, forward, who can I give this to that's going to get us on attack? So I think midfield three of those three I'd be keen to see potentially in the cup against Raith. I think that might be the perfect time to try it. You're at Ibrox, you're against a kind of lower league team, so I think that if he was going to try it, that would be the perfect time. But I just think that Beale likes this 4-3, 4-2-3-1. He likes the two sitting midfielders, and I think he would, if it was me, I would play them, but I think Michael Beale will stick with his kind of two sitting midfielders, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the manager does do that moving forward, especially with the opportunity that next Sunday against Raith Rovers brings. On to Cantwell, then Ross sort of touched on his performance there. I think for most people, got man of the match. Sponsors gave it at Ibrox to Ben Davies, which I thought was a bit interesting. I thought Ben Davies was great. I thought he had a solid game, but I don't know if there's maybe a Ben Davies fanboy and the sponsors that wanted to meet him after the game or something like that and get his autograph. But for me, Cantwell was my man of the match. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but as I say yesterday, the guy was everywhere. For me, Cantwell, he spoke about it after the game. He's now finding his rhythm in a Rangers shirt. We knew he was maybe struggling, not for actual fitness, but match fitness and match sharpness when he first came in. He seems to have got that now. The guy's got the confidence and the ability. For me now, Cantwell's next steps in this, a slight frustration. I wouldn't say it's his fault. It's probably where the manager's got him. But if he's playing as a 10, I would like him to sort of stay in those forward areas a wee bit more, just to try and get his numbers up, because that's something that he's really struggled at the last couple of years. I actually can't remember the last time he scored a goal, to be honest. I mean, it was ages ago. He's only had one assist for us so far. I think it was the Ross County game where he puts in that great little interchange with Morelos. I think it was, he crosses in for Tillman's header. So is it really about numbers now for him going forward, Ross?
I don't think it's about numbers at all, actually. I think that we have enough players to put the ball in the back of the net, particularly in Morelos, Cholak and Sakala. I think if those numbers don't come, there's always going to be questions, and it's easy to pick at that. It's a very obvious thing. Similar to, in a way, to Ryan Kent. When Ryan Kent's performances dip, everyone starts talking about how he doesn't contribute enough goals. It's a fair point, but Cantwell, very different type of player. I agree, he was all over the park, and was full of energy, full of running. I think his output's really good, actually. I think he sees, and I remember he made this comment when he signed, he feels that he can see types of passes that other people don't see. I actually think we've seen him attempting things where other players haven't been quite on his wavelength. So I think that pre-season for him is going to be massive. The rest of this season is really about getting him back up to match sharpness and bedding him into, I suppose, life in Glasgow. I expect him to be a massive player for us next season. I had some doubts around his signing because there were reports from his time at Norwich that he kind of crumbled under pressure and he suffered with the weight of expectation at times, and that for someone then moving to Glasgow to play in an old firm, that makes me quite nervous. But he seems to have stood up so far. He seems to be performing really well. He's another one of those where his family's really bought into it. You can see his brother and his family all the time on Twitter. I think that support of your family and your community around you buying into Rangers is really, really important for someone like that when they move up to Glasgow. I think he's going to be very, very important for us. I would love to see him get some goals, because I think that would start, for a player like him, a creative and a forward-looking player, or an attacking player, the goals will mean a lot to him. And I think he'll get a really good reception when he does score. I think that he's another one of those players that the crowd are kind of buying into as much as he's buying into us. He's the type of player that I can imagine in 6 months' time we'll be saying he just gets it. Like he's bought into the Rangers philosophy. So I hope he does score, and I hope he does contribute some more numbers, probably more for his sake than anything else. But I'm very, very happy with what I've seen from him so far.
Yeah, he has been good so far, and on that, Ross, in terms of what we mentioned earlier about his position and where can he play. One thing that I'll be really interested in when Tillman comes back is how you could possibly fit both of them in the same team, because Cantwell's best position probably is a number 10. I know he can play in a variety of positions. One position that I think could be one for him is sort of that right forward side that we play with, and I think a reasonable comparison could be to Joe Aribo. If you remember a lot under Gerrard and Beale before, Aribo was played in that sort of right side a lot of times against Celtic. I remember the 2-0 game at Ibrox, the Scottish Cup one, where Aribo ran Laxalt riot down that right hand side. How do you think we can get both Tillman and Cantwell in the same team? Do you think that's a position that he could take up?
Well, firstly, thank you for reminding me of the existence of Diego Laxalt, because that was a wonderful season for us, wasn't it?
Well, Brian, you thought Madge Edward Hill was bad, then you've got that guy, but at least he's got Shane Duffy to braid it for him. So
exactly. That was funny, wasn't it? I think it's a good point. Like, how do these two guys play in the same team? I suspect what will happen is that one of them will be given a very structured, defined role, probably Malik Tillman. And one of them will be allowed to be much more creative, exploring the space and not necessarily sticking to a defined position or a defined role. I think that Michael Beale in his coaching philosophy seems to always have one player that has a little bit more freedom and a little bit more flexibility. So when we get rid of Gio and Beale's come back in, we saw a different side to Ryan Kent, right? Because he's all over the park a little bit more. He's got a lot more freedom to wander and just get involved in the game in the way that he sees fit. I suspect that in certain games, as you say, where we're trying to play Tillman, Cantwell, maybe even Hadji all on the same pitch at the same time, I suspect that Cantwell will be given a huge amount of flexibility and freedom to roam the game and go where he sees fit. And I think he's shown that he's got the versatility to be successful in that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely taken to life in Glasgow so far, that's for sure. And that I do like his brother's post on Twitter all the time. He seems to be getting an EasyJet flight for Stansted up to Glasgow every weekend. So good on him, and hopefully accumulate some more EasyJet points in the months and years to come. Brian Raskin as well, obviously one of the new January signings. I thought he was pretty decent yesterday. Going forward, he was involved in everything, great, and the fact that he's very versatile as well, not in terms of his position, in terms of his style of play as well. He's great at tracking runners and covering, but he's also good at going forward and trying to get that ball into dangerous areas. What did you make of his performance yesterday, and how gutting is it after seeing that? You're thinking, God, if only he started last week against Celtic.
Yeah, the thing that kind of impressed me most of it, as I said earlier, is every time he gets the ball, his first thought is forward. It's not side, it's not back the way it's right. How do I get this forward? And that's kind of almost all he's interested in when he's got the ball is, right, need to progress forward, need to play forward, and he just keeps it on the front foot. And that's kind of what you need against these teams that are going to sit in and sit deep and try and frustrate. You need your midfielders to be constantly looking forward and trying to play it into those forward areas, into the attacking players' feet and work off them. And I think there's potential there for him to chip in with goals as well. I don't see why he can't get, between 5 and 8 goals a season next season. I'm sure he's got a decent shot on him as well. So I don't see why he can't chip in with numbers in terms of goals, as well as, you might not get assists, which is probably the guy that plays the pass before the assist kind of thing. So I think he'll be a fantastic player for us, and he's really aggressive in terms of his work off the ball. He's good at winning the ball. He's not afraid to put his foot in. He's, as you say, he'll track his runners. He'll kind of do the dirty work as well as doing the work on the ball. For me, the interesting thing will be is who partners him on a consistent basis. Is it going to be one of the current crop of midfielders, or has Michael Beale got his eye on another midfielder in the summer to come in and partner him? Because I think he's definitely the one that you sort of build your base field around, and then it's just about finding somebody to go alongside him.
No, definitely. I think, as you say, I think we're going to start to see the best of Nico Raskin now going forward to the end of the season. I think, do you know what? I know people have been saying why bother paying the money for him when he's out of contract in 6 months' time. But if you can bed him into that squad and, get him up and running for the start of next season where he just starts and goes off to a flyer and we win the league next year, it'll seem like a snippet, won't it?
I think games like yesterday proved why we paid that money for both Cantwell and Raskin. We get them in early because come the summer they've had that experience, as Ross said. They should then be settled into life in Glasgow, which I think as fans we probably don't take that into consideration when players come in. I think we just expect that they arrive here, they get set up in a nice house, and then they just go on the pitch and they play. It's probably I'm going to guess it's not quite as easy as that. I'm going to guess it's quite a big.
I mean that seems pretty easy. I wouldn't mind that in my work, just getting set up with a big course and then all you need to do is go and play football at the weekend.
I'm going to guess that there's a bit more to it than that, especially if you're coming from Belgium like Raskin. I don't know his family situation. I don't know if he's got a partner that's not here yet. All of that sort of thing plays into how somebody settles in, and how many times have we seen fantastic players come over, and the reason it doesn't work out isn't because of talent, but it's because they just can't settle in the city, or they can't settle in life in Glasgow or at any new club. And I think having that extra 6 months where, because the league, we're not expecting them to turn that around. It'd be great if they did, but nobody's expecting it. So maybe you could argue there's a bit less pressure on them now than there will be at the start of the season. So they'll have that bedding in time. They'll know their teammates. They'll know the manager. They know what he expects of them. So hopefully they'll be kind of hitting the ground running when it comes to the new season.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point you make about settling in. From what I've kind of seen on Instagram, I think Raskin's got a pretty good unit around him. I don't know, I don't know his relationship status, but I know he's got a good solid group of pals around him that have been up a few times, and he's been posting about them a lot, so that's good. Speaking of Instagram as well, I've just seen that Michael Beale's been cutting about with Falcons today. So if you want to know what the Rangers manager gets up to after a hard-earned victory at the weekend, then you've got that update on Gersnet if you want to head over to Michael Beale's Instagram page. But I think in terms of settling in as well, I think it's something Michael Beale does like to do. Like, you can tell the guy's very good at building relationships with people of all cultures, faiths, backgrounds. When you're at Liverpool and Chelsea, it's not just English players that you're working with, it's, players from all over the world. He's obviously been to Brazil. He's built up an extensive sort of contacts list from all over the world. And I think you've seen that sort of helping players settle in well the most this season that we won the league, because if you're a player like, I suppose Hadji was already here, but the guys like Roof, Cedric Hitton and whatnot can be very, very difficult to settle in a new city, especially when you've been told you can't leave the house. So the fact that he was able to do that for guys like, especially the likes of Roof as well, who, I know a lot of people are desperate to get rid of him because of his injury situation, stuff like that, but he just loves living in Glasgow. He's got a lot of a vested interest up here now, and when the time does come for Kamara to leave, it's going to be one that I think he'll personally be quite upset by because of how much he loves it up here, never mind the club. So Michael Beale definitely does have that ability. And Ross, one of the comments that the manager made in the press conference yesterday was about Čolak. He said that was probably the most pleasing aspect of his of the performance yesterday. Thought Čolak was immense. He put himself about. He got obviously the assist for Sakala's goal. It was a wee bit weird, I felt, because I thought Čolak was going to turn around and hit it, but it was almost like when he just gave it to Sakala, he just went, on you go, wee man, I know you've missed a couple of chances, you need a goal, so you go and do it. And fair play to Sakala, he absolutely buried it. But what did you make of Čolak's performance yesterday, Ross?
Yeah, I think after that we start a campaign to nominate Čolak as the nicest man in football, because he's
absolutely
served that up on a plate for Sakala after Sakala was clearly visibly getting frustrated at missing a couple of big chances. I tell you, Morelos would never have done that. Morelos would have turned the other way and belted it. So Čolak is a really interesting one. He's clearly a good footballer. I kind of underestimated or undervalued him until we played Ross County at home, probably October time. I can't really remember, but he scored 2. I think we won 4-0. and he scored 2 wonderful goals and had a really, really good performance. He's been really unfortunate with his injury, and I think it's one that he was just coming back and he broke down again and had a couple of setbacks. So in and out of the team, always going to be difficult for him to come in and disrupt and displace Morelos. I thought he played really well, actually. I thought he did his role really well, and despite not scoring, as you say, he provided one for Sakala. He was always a threat. He was always busy. I like him. I don't know what his future is, though. I don't know. I mean, there's no real resale value there. He's, 29, 30 years of age, something like that. He's been good, but as I say, he's been unfortunate with injury. So he's not been able to kind of set Scottish football on fire as maybe he would have liked. So I would, as much as I do like him and I do think he's a good player, I would also not be disappointed to see us try and replace him in the summer, because I think we could probably do better in terms of the business side of things. Someone with, a bit younger with more potential and resale and that kind of thing. Someone that fits the model a bit better. That being said, to the original question, yeah, I thought he played really well, and I was really, really pleased to see him back in, because he's clearly a very likeable big guy, very good footballer for this level. Would like to see him get a few more goals and end the season on a high.
Oh, absolutely. I thought he was a Manchester Day, and it's something that he kind of gets tarred with as well. The whole sort of work rate thing, he doesn't do it, and he kind of gets compared to Chris Boyd a wee bit in that aspect, or he can only score goals. Well, to be honest, if he can only score goals, then I would much rather that than someone that worked hard. But I think that is doing Čolak a bit of a disservice, because, the guy, he drops deep quite a lot. Sometimes he was actually going back into sort of Ryan Jack's position. I think he did once or twice during the game. So he's a guy that gets about, and that's something that, we've talked about it with Askin, we've talked about it with Cantwell. We've got players that, the work rate is there. I don't quite think it was there, maybe under Gio. I don't know if that was an effort point of view, or maybe just the way that Gio was playing, where you need to be really disciplined, you need to stay in the same position, especially the wingers. And, I think that didn't help the likes of Ryan Kent with how isolated he was, and, his numbers under Gio just weren't good at all. And, obviously that's picked up a little bit. So, no, hopefully he can continue to perform well, Čolak, going forward. And obviously we've got a big game at Easter Road on Wednesday that we're going to talk about. I think first things first, Morelos will probably come back in for Čolak. I think it's the right game for Morelos. He loves these occasions. He loves scoring against Hibs. Surprised he never actually started yesterday, because Morelos has got a great record against Killie. Got my bet as well, because I had him on to score twice, and he's getting subbed on me like 10 minutes to go. So thanks very much to the manager for making me lose a fiver there. But Brian, big game Wednesday, Hibs. It's never easy at Easter Road, is it? We always seem to make it difficult for ourselves over there. The last time we went there was just a really, really poor performance. We got in the league with that penalty from Tav. They equalise. Tom Lawrence, who sadly is out for the rest of the season, scored a great header to put us back in the lead. And then we had the 2 red cards. The Morelos one probably deserved, and obviously the Lundstrom one, which wasn't. Then there was about 40 minutes of time added on, and Hibs got a wonder goal at the end to get that equaliser. So I've got down here, Michael Beale has passed out with Celtic pretty much every test that he's been faced with. I think that he has had a difficult start in terms of the opposition that he's faced. He's now, apart from Celtic Park on Wednesday, he will have been to pretty much every typical, difficult away ground. He's managed to go to Pittodrie and win, being a goal down. We dominated at Tynecastle. We've been to Rugby Park, a place that he struggled at before with the previous regime. So hopefully on Wednesday, Brian, this is another test that the manager can pass.
Yeah, hopefully. I think it's obviously going to be a difficult game. It's it's a night game. It's not on UK TV, so you'd imagine it'll be.
Is it not?
Houses. No, I don't think Sky are showing it.
That's another masterstroke by Sky. Celtic are playing Hearts on Wednesday as well, not because that's at Celtic Park. I doubt that'll be on the telly either.
No, that's not on telly.
Big up Neil Doncaster in that amazing TV deal.
Yeah, we need to give thanks to those big wigs at the SPFL that brought home this wonderful TV deal that we're locked into until 2029.
Well, only 6 years to go.
Yeah. Who could have predicted that was a bad idea, eh?
Yeah, it's almost as if we were wanting an investigation into all this and actually even offered to pay for it, but no, carry on, Brian, sorry.
Yeah. So I'm going to imagine it'll be close to a full house, or as close to a full house as Hibs can muster. So it'll be, a difficult game. The fans will be up for it. Of course, they love it when Rangers come to town and they can take points off us. So they'll be up for it. It's another test for Michael Beale. He's kind of passed everyone so far, apart from, as you say, against Celtic. We've been to Tynecastle and we won there comfortably. So hopefully we go to Easter Road and win just as comfortably. I think the team lineup will be interesting. I suspect they won't want to make too many changes. I suspect they'll want to kind of go as close to the same again as they can in terms of fitness. I know he said that Jack and Raskin were tiring, so I wonder if maybe he thinks they can't go again, 2 or 3 days later. So that'll be interesting. I think, as you say, Morelos will probably come in for Chola. This is the type of game that Morelos loves in terms of being able to bully defenders and play that kind of lone striker role. We know that he loves that sort of battle, so I think he'll be right up for this one. And maybe want to prove a bit of a point after being left out yesterday. He doesn't like not starting games, as we've seen by his reaction when he was taken off last weekend. So hopefully he's right up for a couple of goals. And I think, as you say, the league, the quality in the league isn't great out of the field for him. So hoping this can be another kind of good performance and a comfortable win would do me nicely.
I know any type of win at Easter Road would do me nicely. A comfortable win would be even better. But as a place that we struggle traditionally to go to and pick up results, it's kind of expected. Hibs a wee bit like Aberdeen, that even though they've got the Edinburgh Derby, playing against Rangers still seems to be the biggest game of their season. But that's just that's their prerogative, I suppose. Ross, Brian mentioned there the possible team. One thing I think will be interesting is that midfield. I've got a feeling that Lundstrom's going to start. I would play the same midfield three. I think the manager said that Tillman probably isn't going to make it on Wednesday, which will be a blow because we know what he can do. And he'll probably be looking to get him back in against Rafe next weekend. I just think Lundstrom might come in for Jack because Jack just cannot seem to play 2 matches in a week, and I'm a wee bit concerned about Lundstrom coming back after, let's face it, was a shocking performance against Celtic.
Yeah, I agree. Firstly, Ryan Jack doesn't seem to have the fitness or the longevity to play 2 games in 5 days or whatever it is, which is a concern, of course, and another area that needs to be looked at for recruitment in the summer. I suppose the obvious thing to say is that John Lundstrom, on the face of it, brings a bit of steel and fight to that midfield, a bit of a hard man edge, for want of a better word, that maybe a Raskin or a Cantwell might not, or a Tillman might not, and maybe that's what you want on a wet, cold Wednesday night in Leith. Is someone that's not afraid to stand up and that's not going to cower in an intimidating atmosphere. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Hibs are resurgent at the moment. I was listening to the Sports Sound, the podcast version that they do this today, and again, they've got a good result yesterday. Their players are playing well. They're scoring goals. They've obviously lost Porteous in January, but he's been replaced, and it's, they're not showing any vulnerability at the back. So a very, very difficult game. I think it'll be won or lost in midfield. I think we need to take our chances when they come along. I agree that Morelos will come in. Morelos loves these games. Morelos loves winding them up. But yeah, I think, I agree. I don't think John Lundstrom's had a good season at all. And John Lundstrom has underperformed, in my opinion, for the best part of a year now. So that does give me some concern. But with Ryan Jack not being able to make it, I'd rather have the likes of Lundstrom come in than a Scotty Arfield. So it might be that the manager's hand is forced a little bit here. but it's a tough game. And as you mentioned a few moments ago, Beale has stood up to every other test in the league, has gone to every other so-called difficult venue with the exception of Parkhead and got results. So I think he's kind of earned our backing and our support on that one. And look, I on paper, we're still the better team. We're the stronger team. Confidence in the stands it feels like it's really low at the moment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that confidence on the pitch is low. And I think it's a game that if we go into this thinking it's a hard game, thinking that we're beaten, then we will be beaten. I think I'm sure Beale will have them fired up. Look, Beale is also a character who knows exactly how much this means to all of us. And we've seen him picking fights with John Kennedy on touchlines. We've seen him getting heated. So I am sure that he will have those players fired up.
No, he absolutely will. And like you say, Morelos loves these games. It's weird when Morelos, he kind of loves the games in between the smaller opposition and Celtic, your Hibs, your Aberdeens and whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see who he starts to pick fights with now that Porteous isn't there. I'm actually a wee bit disappointed that Porteous isn't there anymore because the guy was prone to a wee howler or two against us because he just clearly did get wound up and played the occasion and not the game. Ross, you touched on Lundstram there a wee bit. Where do you kind of stand on where he is in his future? I think realistically he is going to stay. I can't see he's selling him. I think the manager likes him. Whenever he talks about senior players, Lundstram has only been in for just over a year. He is one of the senior players in the team. I still think there is a place for him there. I still think he can do good in that Raskin role. I think it would be good maybe next season to have him and Raskin sort of alternate between the two. I just have that concern with Lundstram mostly against Celtic, where for me, kind of similar, I made the wee dig at Porteous there, but I think Lundstram can do that as well. I think you find that he'll give the ball away, and when he does give the ball away, he just seems to lose it up there, and he'll go in and he'll start doing things that he wouldn't normally do. He doesn't really make any bad or really terrible challenges or anything like that. I just think that he tries a wee bit too harder, and I think when he does that, he ends up making more mistakes, sadly. So what's your sort of position on where Lundstram is right now?
Yeah, it's a shame for him because he seems to be one of those players that when he has a bad game, he has a really bad game. Like he never just has a 5 out of 10. He goes on to have a shocker, and I think you're right. I think he kind of tries to overcorrect what he's done wrong, and it just all falls apart for him. Like I said a moment ago, since the Europa League semi-final against Leipzig, he's kind of been on a downward trajectory, and it's not really clicked for him. But he was one of our best performers in that 55 season, wasn't he? So if well, I don't know. I believe that Mike Beale can get the best out of him. I still think there's a place for him. I don't think the player will want to go anywhere. He's 29 years of age now. He probably realises he's not going to get another move back to the Premier League in England. He's not going to get a bigger money deal than he's got at the moment here. So I don't see him going anywhere. I don't see anyone else coming in for him. And I do still think there's a place for him. I suspect you're right that he kind of needs to get his head sorted in these bigger occasion games, and that when one thing goes wrong, don't let it unravel and don't let it affect your whole performance. I would love to see, he can be such an important player. Chips in with goals. We saw him obviously get the winner against Leipzig to put us in the Europa League final. Seen him score some really good long range efforts. There's one against Hearts that stands out. Scored a long range goal back in October. Maybe not October of last season, I can't remember now, but at Ibrox from outside the box against Hearts. He's a good player. He's a good player who feels like he's in a sort of prolonged period of bad form at the moment. He could be very, very important for us in big games. So I hope to see Mick Beale keep him and get the best out of him next season.
Yeah, let's hope that can be the case. And just before we end then, Ross, what's your prediction for the game on Wednesday?
I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be really tight. I think it's a really, really hard game. I think both teams will score. I think we'll nick it 2-1.
Right, I'll take that. Brian, we'll finish up with you. What's your prediction for Wednesday?
I'm going to go 2-0 Rangers.
I would rather that than 2-1, but I'll take either or. I think it could be very similar to Tynecastle a few weeks ago. I'll say 3-0. I'm confident going into this. I think that these types of games when we're playing, Wednesday, Saturday, or Thursday, Sunday, as we all wish those days could come back again. We just seem to be clicking. We did it a lot under Gerrard and Bill the last time. And for me, it's another test ticked off if we can go there. But 2-1, 2-0, 3-0, as long as Rangers win, we'll be absolutely delighted with that. And we'll just finish up there, guys. Just before we go, though, obviously we are live on YouTube right now. It'll be available afterwards as well on the YouTube channel. But round about tomorrow morning, you will be able to download the podcast on all your usual podcast providers such as Google Podcasts and Spotify as well. And we'll be back on Tuesday with Alec and David Fraser to give you a more in-depth preview of the Hibs game, where I'm sure Alec will give you a lot of stats about all the times we've been to Easter Road and one lost drew. Hopefully he mentions a certain game that happened in May 2005, which would be pretty good. But Brian, thanks very much for joining me tonight. Good to have you on again.
No worries, good to be on.
Good, and you as well, Ross. Good to be on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
No worries, guys. Thanks very much, and we'll see you back on Tuesday with the preview pod. Cheerio, bye.